For those who might be guests today or watching online and are new to us, we are reading through a book together this Lent entitled Seeking God by Trevor Hudson. There's at least one copy out on the welcome counter in the narthex. If you would like one, by all means take it free of charge to you. So this past week, we read chapters 4 and 5 in this book. And I thought to myself earlier in the week, boy, this is a week I really wish I could preach 2 sermons. Because both chapters are really, really good. But then, of course, I thought to myself, that means I have to do double the work, and you have to do double the listening, so that's not going to happen. Let's start here today. Words really matter. There's a neurologist by the name of Nadine Kazi who studies the effect of words on the human brain. And they summarize it by simply saying you can change the whole course of your life with your words. Your words become your world. This, of course, is what Scripture says about the power of the human tongue. Proverbs says in the Old Testament that it contains the very power of life and death. It is a tree of life. It contains healing if you use it well. The letter of James in your New Testament, chapter 3, verses 3 and 4, compare the human tongue to a bit in a horse's mouth and the rudder on a large ship. Your words become your world. If you will, your words are contagious. They are contagious to you, and they are contagious to every person around you. And how you choose to use the power of your speech will largely determine not only the course of your life, but how you affect others. Let's focus in on a particular kind of words today, particular set of words that we often use without knowing. This, if you're a part of our church family, there was a podcast, a short 5-minute video podcast that I sent around a couple weeks ago that focused on this very subject. So there's someone who teaches at the University of Pennsylvania in the Wharton School named Jonah Berger, recently published a book called Magic Words. One of the chapters in that book is about what's called identity words. It's the nouns you use about yourself, not the verbs. It's what I am, not what I do. And these words have tremendous shaping power in your life. Some examples. There was a get out the vote movement that was trying really hard to get more people just to go to the polls and vote. So Jonah Berger encouraged them to change the language of how they communicated with prospective voters. Don't ask people, have you voted today? That's a verb. Instead, ask them, are you a voter? That's a noun. Are you a voter is a state of being. It's a kind of person. It's a responsible citizen. Sure enough, they increased the level of voting. Another example, do you run? Or are you a runner? Verb versus noun. Being versus doing. Guess which set, yes, they've studied this, guess which set of people actually runs more? It's not the people who say they run, it's the people who say they're runners. One more example. A study was done at the University of Pennsylvania where teachers would ask classes to stay around after and help clean up. They were having very little positive effect in this ask, so they changed the verbiage. They changed the verbiage to say, will you be a helper, noun, not verb, will you be a helper and stay and clean up? Sure, I want to be the kind of person who's a helper, so of course I'll stay after and I'll help clean up for 5 minutes. They also tried, I'm a clean person, I'm sure you are too. Would you help me clean this space after we're done? Massive improvement. Nouns versus verbs, identity words really matter. Today we're going to talk about identity words specific to people like you and me, gathered in places like this all over the world today. Here are some words you'll hear used by people like us about ourselves. We might say that we are people of faith, or that we are believers in God. At the moment, somewhere between 77 and 82%, depending on the study you look at, of all Americans say that these two phrases are true of them. So it's a vast majority of people in the country in which we live. But these phrases are incomplete at best, problematic at worst. Because being a person of faith doesn't really tell me much about you. Because what I need to know is what you have faith in, what you have faith about. Believing in God works no differently. Because the next question is, what God do you believe in? What is the character and persona of the God that you claim? James chapter 2, verse 19 says, hey, by the way, you claiming to believe in God is not that big a deal, my paraphrase, because even the demons believe in God and they shudder. That's an exact quote. How about this? You and I might use about ourselves that we are Christian. 15 years ago, 77% of America claimed to be Christian. 10 years ago, it was 71%. In 2022, it was 63 or 64%, according to the Pew Research Center. Do you know that the word Christian is only used 3 times in the New Testament? There are far more common identity words for people like you and me than the phrase Christian. In fact, the word Christian in the first 100 years of church history is most often used by Roman authorities about people who follow Jesus. It's not used by Christians themselves. Part of what's problematic about the word Christian is we have to define it. You might say that it is fraught with definitional issues. Who gets to define what the word Christian means? Who gets to define what it is that Christians must believe in order to claim the label Christian? Have you ever had the encouraging experience of being called a heretic by another Christian? I have. And it's simply because I didn't fit their definition of what they thought or their group thought a Christian was. And by the way, I question the utility of this word anyway. If 30 years ago, over 80% of the American populace claimed to be that, I don't know how useful it is. I would like to introduce you to a better identity word for you and me. One that is all over the New Testament, specifically the Gospels. And this is the focus of chapter 5 in the book that you read. What if you and I took for ourselves the identity of being a disciple? Now, what's that? It simply means, in Jesus' day, the first century world, to be a student, to be an apprentice, to be a novice, to be a trainee, to be an intern. All those people whose names you might know, like James and John and Peter and Matthew, when they were Jesus' disciples, they were his students. They were his trainees. This is a beautiful word because it's not simply a word about learning. It is a word about hands-on learning. Not just knowing, but trying. Disciples aren't just born, disciples are made. It is a lifelong process. This is why in the history book of your New Testament, the book of Acts, the most common label for Christians is followers of the way. It's used 7 times in the book of Acts. Followers of the way. As if Jesus were blazing a trail and we come along behind him to follow in his footsteps. Disciples, sure, they're born, but they are made. This is hands-on practice. And of course, you need to realize, some of you do who have been around the church block a few times, that disciple and being a disciple and discipleship is central to our mission as Christian people. In the Great Commission of Matthew 28, verses 19 and 20, we are told to go and make this word, disciples. Here's what that doesn't mean. Go and make more church attenders. Now, it might include that, but that is hardly the dictionary definition of a disciple as understood biblically. Go and make more church attenders. Go and make more church members. Go and make more givers to our church. Go and make more people who cognitively believe in God. Go make more persons of faith. Go make more Christians. No, that word may include all of those things, but it is more than those things. As Brian McLaren puts it, the mission of the church is more, better disciples. His church back in the day used to say that their mission was simply for everyone in their church to be a disciple and go make a disciple. That's the Great Commission. This is why Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the great Lutheran German pastor of the 1900s, said, "Christianity without discipleship is inevitably Christianity without Christ." Who are you? What is your identity word for yourself? Let me suggest to you that what we should be together are disciples. To be a disciple is to be a learner. To be a disciple is to be someone who spends your life trying to imitate the Jesus you love and revere. It is someone who is willing to practice over and over and over again the ways and heart and mind and acts of Jesus. To be a disciple is to be a learner. Guess what that means? It means you're not the expert in your life. Let me say that again. If you want to be a disciple, then you are willingly admitting about yourself, I'm not the expert here. Someone else is, and that someone is named Jesus. It's a humble word, this word disciple. It is a word that asks you to yield your will. Here's the problem with what I'm saying. In 2019, the American Psychological Association did a study of overconfidence. What people groups, what strata of people in America are the most overconfident? Oh, suburban church to whom I'm speaking this morning, you want to guess? The more income you have per year, the more overconfident you are about yourself. The more education you have, because I'm a pretty educated guy, the more overconfident you are about yourself. The more successful you think you've been in life, the more overconfident you are about yourself and your abilities. And please see, the reason I am mentioning this is that works entirely against being a disciple. In order to be a learner, you cannot be the expert in your life. That means for every one of us, regardless of age, regardless of life station, we should every week, every month, every year be asking, Jesus, what do I need to learn right now? Jesus, what do I need to try right now that I have not tried before, even if I'm not very good at it? This is the way of a disciple, an apprentice, a novice. You can't learn to fix your own plumbing without actually trying to fix your own plumbing. This is the way of a disciple. So, who are you right now? Where are you in life? Are you older and your body is beginning to break down and weaken? You've never done that before. Earlier in your life, you are more vibrant and strong. You are encountering something you have never had to traverse before. Guess, as a disciple, what your response needs to be. Jesus, I do not know what to do with this. What do I need to learn? What do I need to change? What do I need to try? Maybe you've never been an empty nester before and your last kid just moved out. And your heart is torn. You feel empty. Same response. Jesus, I am your disciple. I don't know how to do this. What do I need to learn right now? How can I follow in your footsteps right now? What should I try right now that maybe I've never tried before? And on it goes. This is the way of being a disciple. This is what it looks like. But see, along with that comes this recognition. To be a disciple also means that we have to unlearn some things. In fact, very often the first step of learning is to unlearn. None of us come to Jesus, none of us follow Jesus as a blank slate. You come to Jesus with your own baggage. And that baggage could be the home in which you were raised, how you were treated, how you were spoken to, the values you were given. For others of us, it might be the tribe in which we were raised. Maybe we were raised in a church or in a denomination that was really heavy-handed and made Christianity feel like a weight, not freedom. For you, that's the baggage you bring to Jesus. For some of you, you bring your politics. For others of you, you bring what your friends think about this and that. For others of you, you bring what it is that's expected of people who have your profession or vocation. All of us have baggage. None of us come to Jesus as a blank slate. Here's what you need to know. His disciples were the same way. He called them to follow him out of what they already were. Some were lowly fishermen, having a hard time making ends meet for their family. Their self-esteem and self-image perhaps really low, feeling marginalized and overlooked by the society around them. Others were scoundrels, thieves, tax collectors like Matthew. They all came with baggage, just like you and me. And in order to be a disciple, you have to be willing to unpack that baggage. If you will, you have to be willing to let go of it. You have to be willing to unlearn before you can learn. This is why several times in the New Testament, St. Paul describes this movement of the spiritual life. For example, in Colossians chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. He says, you must strip off the old self and then put on the new self. You have to let go of your baggage in order to become the person that God desires you to be. This is how Richard Rohr, in his book Falling Upward, describes this movement of the spiritual life, or what you find in the life of a disciple. Quote, transformation is often more about unlearning than learning. Until we are led to the limits of our present game plan and find it insufficient, we will not search out or find the real source, the deep well, or the constantly flowing stream. The only true joy on earth is to escape from the prison of our own making and enter by love into a much larger world, full of the God who dwells and sings within the essence of every creature and in the core of our own souls. Maybe the journey is not so much about becoming anything. Maybe it's about unbecoming everything that really isn't you. That is the perspective of a disciple. One more tidbit to add. Everything that you hope or wish to gain as a Christian person out of your relationship with God or out of your faith? Yeah, it pretty much hinges on discipleship. Let me explain or give you some examples. This is how Jesus, toward the end of the Sermon on the Mount, describes the effect of discipleship on your life. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and acts on them, that's the language of a disciple. You see the teacher and you act on what the teacher says and does, will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. What do you get by living the life of a disciple? Stability, security. How about this? Again, Jesus speaking. If you continue in my word, that's discipleship, you are truly my disciples. You will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Isn't that what your heart longs for and mine? To know that which is true, abiding and sure. And not only to know the truth, but to have the truth set your soul free. Discipleship is the way that you gain that. Last, Jesus again speaking in the Gospel of Luke. If anyone would walk with me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. For whoever will save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. You want a new life? Do you hope that the presence of God in your life will transform you from what you have been to what you hope you can be? The only route to that is to be a student of Jesus, to be his apprentice for your whole life long. Note with me that this is what we all yearn for. Now let's identify together that the only way to get there is to be disciples. One of the people in your book that is in focus throughout is a person named Dallas Willard, one of the great writers on spiritual formation in the latter 20th century in America. Taught philosophy at the University of Southern California. This is what he says about discipleship right now in the American church. Quote, "The greatest issue facing the world today, with all its heartbreaking needs, is whether those who are identified as Christians will become disciples, students, apprentices, practitioners of Jesus Christ, steadily learning from him how to live the life of the kingdom of heaven in every corner of their human existence." Do you agree that the greatest need in the world is for all those people who claim the label of Christian to actually take upon themselves the identity word of disciple? Who are you today listening to me? Who do you want to be? You can do no better than the word disciple. Let's pray. Our good God, we hear the high calling of Jesus to follow after him, to be his disciple. Whoever we thought we were when we walked in here, may we latch on to this most important identity word. We will be disciples, Monday to Saturday, day in and day out, year in and year out. And whatever else we do and whatever else we are as a church, may we say together that we will be disciples together. This is the mission you have left us in the world. May we be faithful to it. We ask this for the sake of your kingdom. Amen.